Here are pictures of two classes I had in the past. In the left one, I'm hoping to communicate some enthusiasm that I got from physics kids who didn't actually sign up, most of them, to take that class, but I think they got something out of it and they enjoyed themselves. They, in fact, invented a whole gang, the most innocuous gang ever concocted, where they made up their own symbol, which, as I recall, was this, and they yelled PG, which was physics group, which was nothing. They admitted it meant nothing, but they were having fun and they enjoyed themselves and they enjoyed the class. And that's not the only thing. The academic standards are real, but when kids hate going to class, then they don't participate. And so I'm trying to illustrate here, as along with the making s'mores on the right side over the Bunsen burners, that having kids want to come to class is a real thing. It's actually important. And when they don't like you and they don't like the class, then they just resist everything you're doing. And I know that because I did it in some of my classes. I had teachers that made me resist. So being a likable person, being honest with them, admitting your mistakes, and having an enthusiasm for the topic and for them as people is an important point. As far as equity and so forth, which everybody's been mentioning, I've been trying to concentrate on not everybody is a science nerd like me, and it's okay if we have people who are not going to go to college. They're going to start their own business. They're going to be a welder. They're going to be a hair technician. They're going to be a dental hygienist. There's lots of jobs that don't use the kind of skills that I like. Not everybody has to be like me. You can have another skill, another job that doesn't require spending the time and money for 4 years of college. And my point is to have kids moving on up and out of high school able to make good decisions and having the opportunities and the skill sets and the thinking skills to make the kind of decisions that they appreciate and they can live with for the rest of their lives. What I want them to be able to do is be self-actualized and really start making adult decisions in good ways and wise ways, not following in my footsteps, being a giant science nerd or something. Here's my resume, which I'm sure is pretty boring. This is my 8th year at Silver Valley High. I now have dropped physics. The school has dropped physics, put it only online, and I now have chemistry, AP chemistry, and advanced chemistry. We've learned you can't call it honors because it's not a second year. I like that. I really like AP because it's actually a little complicated and it actually makes me think. Here's my leadership platform paper, and in rough terms, what I'm saying here is that I've seen that principals make a cultural difference, and when the principal is grouchy or the teacher is grouchy and not encouraging and so forth, it really trickles down. And we had a principal previously at that high school who could kind of manufacture problems. And one kid has his phone out, and then the teachers got a huge problem, even though the kid was not being a disturbance. It was kind of searching for problems instead of, searching for the positive. And it's not that the rules are just made to be broken, but it's kind of looking for things to pick at sometimes, rather than keeping the whole big picture in view, I think. Another thing I'd like to point out with the staff cooperation note here is that I think in some cases that was lacking, and I noticed very much that I couldn't get through 2 paragraphs with that principal many times. He had so many thoughts to come out, he just couldn't wait. If he made any thoughtful pauses and so forth, he got interrupted. And so I really try to concentrate on saying my bit and then just shutting up, and then shutting up the next 2 or 3, maybe 4 times. It feels like maybe I could have jumped in, and I think that goes a long way. I've seen kids gain a lot more trust that they're being heard if I can just sit there and nod with my eyes on them, and then prove at the end that I've been listening because I can repeat back their ideas and ask them relevant questions. Here are my documents for Standard 1. I see I got the numbering wrong on the right side. I didn't notice that was happening. Basically, the equity gap that I analyzed on the left for the Cal APA was the math scores between our economically disadvantaged identified students and those who are not, and that's our biggest gap. It's not along ethnic grounds, partly because we don't have a statistically significant breakdown or breakout of most ethnic groups. Our school is so small that when you test only the juniors, say in math, there aren't enough of many groups to actually count, because if you test only 10 kids in that group per year, then it's not statistically significant. The data can vary so much just by the group that year that it doesn't count for analysis. So I went through with some of the math teachers, and we made some ideas to address that. I appreciated the Frisk method that the professor put out there. That is a good pamphlet and something I am going to keep, and writing those letters to the fictional parents and students was a good exercise. That was one of the things I actually liked about this. School Site Council is something I'm participating in again this year, although it hasn't started back up so far because we have completed 1 week and 2 days so far. But I'm going to use that to build my skills and my knowledge for the future work that I do in administration. Here's the speech that I wrote to give to new stakeholders who arrive to a school site council meeting, defining what it is and what they do and a lot of the terms that they may not know. I mean, certainly I didn't know them when I arrived at that kind of thing, and I learned some of them through this class, so I'm sure that they need the help. Everybody encounters something for the first time, right? And here is our school vision and mission statement and our description. It's a very small school for a high school. We are currently bumped up to about 360 kids. I do like that we have art, orchestra, music, and auto shop. Auto shop has been disappearing in American schools, but I keep trying to point out that equity means not forcing everybody into things they don't like. Not everybody has to go to college, and there is a big argument to be made for going to a trade school like welding school or mechanic school, because you have a pretty good shot at opening your own business someday, and you skip the time and the money going to college. You start earning earlier, and it's financially, very defendable. Plus, some people, just are more mechanically, visually skilled and aren't trying to solve, how much acid is needed to use in this system to get the pH to change from this and cause precipitate like the stuff I teach. On the right here we have my interview with the former principal. He did have a lot of insights. He'd been in the district for a long time. He just recently left. He'd been the teacher before. He was in my classroom teaching my classes, and then he was the principal at another school and then our school. One of the things that I mentioned in there is the ability to grow, because what we had there was a big guy who was in the Marines, and he had a bit of a habit of kind of ordering kids around in ways that turned them off, and he grew a lot even in the time I knew him, and he became a lot more approachable, and I like the idea that we can all grow no matter what stage we're in. On the right we have my fishbone diagram. Thank you, Taryn and Dana, for working on that with me, in which we try to find institutional and structural reasons that we have the equity gap in those math scores I mentioned. Finally, we have my thesis, which is very long and probably pretty boring to everybody else. Basically, I surveyed a bunch of my students, and we discovered, kind of no surprise, that they prefer projects and games to just worksheets. That's not exactly, like I said, a surprise. Dr. Myrick pointed out that's not really a surprise. So what have I contributed, she asked. And the thing that strikes me is that there is a middle ground between projects and games, and a PBL, an open-ended build a project, make a device kind of thing, where the object is student derived, and games, which are competitions and so forth. There are activities that can be considered halfway between and get a lot of results, and the students expressed preference for things just that involve rolling dice. And what has surprised me and what they confirmed is that if you can even get them flipping cards, rolling dice, finding items in the room, working together to create codes for escape rooms and so forth, their appreciation of the task goes way up, their participation goes way up. And I just proved that this last week, because I had an escape room which on the face of it is basically asking them to do a lot of not very exciting questions, but you know what? The participation was really good because it's framed as an escape room. And so you don't have to go and make a game out of everything. Not everything has to be an open-ended project, but activities that have a bit of a goal and frame it as not just put the number here do really well.